I'm one of those degenerates that really likes stall, and I really like it for a few reasons. It's super cool to just be able to switch in on your opponent and tank whatever they have coming to you. It's my preferred way of playing Pokemon. So today I'm going to be doing a stall tier list. My criteria is simple. How good is this Pokemon on stall? For example, if Koraidon were on this list, even though he's a good Pokemon, he would be ranked super low. Because although he is really powerful, on stall, he just wouldn't be able to pull his weight. He is better suited for different types of teams. So, to begin, we will start out with the undisputed queens of stall. The ones that prove that stall really is a girl's game, Blissey and Chansey, who go into the S tier. People constantly talk about their stats and how that allows them to be great special walls. That's 100% accurate. There's a lot of great special walls, but the blobs are really in the league of their own. Blissey has currently the highest HP stat, followed by her daughter Chansey. However, it's not just their stats that set them apart. Lapras, Wigglytuff, and Vaporeon also have a huge HP stats, but they haven't had nearly the same success, as one of the often overlooked reasons is their typing. Yes, normal isn't seen as a great defensive typing, immune to only one type and resistant to none, but because their only weakness is to the fighting type, which has virtually no especially offensive moves, they basically blindly switch into any special move without a second thought. Their abilities also make it impossible to cripple them, making not only them reliable walls, but also cleric-like Pokemon, since they have access to Heal Bell and Aromatherapy to support their fellow teammates. This explains why one of these blobs has always been OU material throughout the gens, and while Generation 9 hasn't been too kind to them by removing Toxic from their arsenal, they still possess valuable moves like Stealth Rocks, and people have been taking inspiration from old Gen 1 Chansey-like sets that would run offensive moves, like Shadow Ball to break Goldango, for example. Their ability to adapt has been almost one of a kind when it comes to Pokemon that perfectly fill their niche. They are the perfect poster children, being the best defensive walls, so to the S tier they go. Next, I'm going to say something fairly controversial. Ferrothorn goes in C.
The deal is off if you come with it. The board expects your resignation in 30 days.
But you can't do this to me.
I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
I've already talked about this in another video, but just to reiterate, people often categorize him as a stall Pokemon, and I understand why. I would do the same thing. His typing, his stats, pretty much everything would lead you to think that he is a stallmon. But here's the thing. Ferrothorn, while he is known to put his typing to use defensively, actually is better for bulky offense teams. Like, yeah, he punishes attackers, and this all makes it seem like he's a stallmon, but that's not true. While you can use Ferrothorn on stall, he's actually better suited for teams where he can be a support. Since rain teams are usually super offense oriented, they need Ferrothorn's defensive capabilities. Pokemon like Tapu Lele, Weavile, Urshifu Rapid Strike, Garchomp really enjoy having Ferrothorn on their team. Although Ferrothorn's move pool seems perfect for stall because of Spike, Stealth Rock, and Leech Seed, and this further makes him seem like a stall Pokemon, he's actually missing one crucial thing, a recovery move. The closest thing he has is Leech Seed, which isn't particularly enough. That's one of the reasons Ferrothorn actually sometimes will run a Choice Band move. And that's just another thing. No stall Pokemon will ever just run a Choice Band moveset. So, a good defensive Pokemon that can be used on stall, but doesn't actually do the best on there. Gliscor has a very interesting journey. For a while, he was running more offensive sets with Swords Dance and Facade. For a long time, he was seen as an offensive Pokemon. However, in recent generations, his defensive typing has been exploited like never before. Ground Flying combined with Poison Heal has always made Gliscor seem practically immortal. But in this generation, especially given Terra, it elevated him to an insane level. He became one of the few support mons to have ever been banned to Ubers. In fact, even though Chansey and Blissey managed to survive when Toxic was taken away from them, Gliscor did much more than survive. Like I said, he was banned. He had Defog and Roost stripped away from it, and he was still better than in the previous generation. His typing combined a passive recovery that exceeds leftovers makes him an amazing stall Pokemon. So he goes to the S tier. Next is Vaporeon. When we talk about bulky waters, she does come up with an amazing HP stat. She has an annoying move pool that includes Heal Bell, Wish, Protect, and Scald, and even has access to moves like Acid Armor. Unfortunately, Vaporeon times in the spotlight was cut short. She isn't unreliable, but weirdly enough, her main weakness is other stall Pokemon. She gets stalled out by bulkier waters, like Suicune and Alomalola. It's not a bad Pokemon, but it actually just gets outdone. It's pretty simple. Suicune has better rounded stats, and Suicune isn't even a stall Pokemon. It's just bulkier. Therefore, she is probably going in the E tier, since there have not been that many times throughout competitive Pokemon history where she has consistently been a top tier stall pick. Next, we're going to talk about my second favorite starter, Skeledirge. Skeledirge has almost everything to be an S tier stallmon. A great stats with defensive potential, an amazing ability in Unaware, which means it can stay in and tank hits all day. This is one of the reasons he is used in Uber, since he perfectly walls Zacian. However, he is currently in the UU tier, and the reason is his typing. He has a lot of common weaknesses, such as Water, Ground, and Dark. He is more vulnerable to hazards than a lot of other Pokemon, and a lot of other people for this reason would prefer to run other Unaware physical mons, like Dondozo. Although he is a personal pick of mine because he's actually a fairly good pick in Uber, I cannot say that he is a go-to pick. So he is going to the B tier. Next, we have Toxapex. When Toxapex introduced, it was ranked up there with Chansey and Blissey for one of the best stall mons. Its water poison typing was unorthodox, but it was really useful in absorbing toxic spikes and had common resistances to types like Water, Fairy, and Fire. And more than that, it had huge defensive stats. It was solidified as one of the best mixed walls of all time. Aside from that, it had access to Regenerator as well, in a move pool that was perfection. Access to Scald, Recover, Knockoff, Light Screen, Baneful Bunker, Haze, and more, with Knockoff and Scald being present on basically every single move pool. However, in Generation 9, not only was Recovery nerfed, but that move pool of Scald and Knockoff were taken away from him. That was devastating. When we take into consideration Terra and just the offensive power creep, he didn't survive and he fell to UU. So while he did have an amazing history, right now he's just not really cutting it. So he is going in the A tier. Next is Quagsire. Now I really do love Quagsire, but I must say he is overhyped as hell. He has a good qualities, don't misunderstand me, and a good typing, good move pool and all, and that's why in Generation 8, when Zacian was running around unnerfed, he was the only Pokemon there that could really just barely wall it. And he was not even that terrible of an option to deal with Kyogre, but those are really rare instances where he was used. Because he has a base stat total of 430 base stats, and he's not exactly min-maxed, he is not a very good wall, speaking generally. Besides those 2 times, he's never really been a good pick, so he goes to E. Next is Garganacl. When it comes to Generation 9 Pokemon, he is definitely one of the bulkiest. In fact, he probably is the only pure Rock-type Pokemon that manages to be viable with his ability Salt Cure, which is essentially just Magic Guard on crack. His move pool of recovered Iron Defense and Salt Cure is one of the easiest ways to annoy your opponent. Plus, he has access to Stealth Rock. He is just a great Pokemon. However, weirdly enough, you don't really see him that much in stall teams. You will see him more on bulky offense teams, and that's because he is able to be a good sweeper. It's not often that a good sweeper is a slow rock type, but with the mix of his defense's overpowered ability and move pool, he makes it work. So I would say that he is better suited for offensive teams in my opinion. But because he has undeniable defensive qualities, I will rank him in A. Next is Dondozo. Bulky waters have always been very popular since Generation 3 with Melodic and Swampert because of his natural defensive potential of water types. They had constantly been common in Pokemon that you would find in stall teams. And in one generation, Dondozo manages to become the new face of bulky waters with an amazing HP stat and defensive stats. It manages to shrug off even super effective hits. And while it doesn't have access to normal recovery via Slag Off or Recovery, he does have access to Rest. And while this isn't ideal, it can come in handy since that means that he doesn't have to be worried about being paralyzed or burned or poisoned. Plus, he is so good that you will actually use him in Ubers. He has a good move pool of Rest, Curse, and options like Body Press, Waterfall, and Wave Crash. Amazing Pokemon, S tier. Next is Umbreon. He was peak popularity in Generation 2 with a very bulky metagame. Everyone had max out stats and was running leftovers. Umbreon role was of a cleric. Basically, he would offer support to his teammates and run Heal Bell and Toxic. However, as I and other people have made clear, contrary to popular belief, Generation 2 was not stall. It was just very bulky metagame, and Umbreon quickly fell off after that. You could potentially use him in stall, like Vaporeon, but he had the same problem. He was just getting outdone. For example, Chansey and Blissey weren't exactly Umbreon replacements, but they had access to Wish and Heal Bell, as well as Toxic. And although Dark is not a bad defensive typing, fighting types were an absolute nightmare for him. So, E tier for now. Next is... Bring it on! I have seen so much of the wall propaganda that I don't even want to talk about it anymore. He has no reliable recovery at all, and he is actually not hard to take out at all. I don't know why people say he's a good wall. He's one of the worst walls. Again, he is cosplaying as a stall Pokemon, but in the worst way. We are ranking him at F. He is just not good. Speaking of low-ranking Pokemon, let's rate Dugtrio. He was used for one reason only, to trap Pokemon, so the rest of his stall teammates could start stalling out their opponents. The thing is though, Arena Trap was banned, and even when it wasn't banned, he was being outdone by another Arena Trap user we'll talk about later. In the early generations, he was more useful, but stall wasn't really a thing in the younger generations. People tend to forget that. Because of that, he's going in the F tier. I just couldn't exactly not mention him because it's an important piece of stall history. Next is Arceus Dark and Fairy. Arceus is an amazing attack style with his ability to go on the offense or defense, and although Dark and Fairy can be good offensive typings, they are usually used defensively. They are both used in fairly similar sense, which is that they are often running a relaxed nature, potentially with Will-O-Wisp, Recover, Judgment, and Refresh. This means their defensive stats can potentially get really high, such as 372. With the move pool so vast and stats so peak, which is literally 120 across the board, you can easily wall Pokemon. And while I focused on the physically defensive variant, you can also run an especially defensive one with Calm Mind or Cosmic Power. Straight to S. Now to complete the D tier, Talonflame. He was not a stall Pokemon at first, but rather a stall Pokemon made out of necessity. Corviknight was a good defogger, but he was blocked by Goldango's ability. Talonflame had access to defog and could threaten him with fire type attacks, as well as Gale Wind, allowing him to get priority moves on his flying type attacks. While this was really creative, he is not built for stall, and it shows with those really low defensive stats. Next is Clodsire. Claude is an amazing special wall who, similar to Quagsire, has a low base stat total but a good move pool, ability, and typing. However, Clodsire is significantly better. Why is that? Well, it's simple. He has what Quagsire lacks, which is a good stat distribution. See, Clodsire is a min-maxed Pokemon, to be a special tank specifically. Not only is he a reliable OU Pokemon, but also a reliable Uber Pokemon. And unlike Quagsire, he doesn't just barely survive hits, but tanks them very well and can set up hazards and set up via Curse, for example. And while in OU he will usually go for Unaware, in Ubers he will go for Water Absorb sometimes to take on the Water Spouts and Origin Pulses of Kyogre. For that, he goes in the A tier. Next is Gothitelle. Gothitelle has the same role as Dugtrio, but does his job a lot better, for a few reasons. One is she has better stats. Now, she doesn't have amazing stats, but some things are better than others. For example, not only is she bulkier, but her movesets are much better, and by that I mean it's much more evil. See, Dugtrio would usually just run physical attacks, but she runs a mix of Taunt, Cosmic Power, Rest, and Calm Mind, as well as Stored Power. This is to trap and decimate her opponents. She was the reason Stall was overpowered and was banned in Generations 6 and 7, so she goes to the A tier, because when it comes to Ubers, she wasn't too good, but it's impressive. However, she didn't do this by herself. She had a partner in crime named Mega Sableye, who has an amazing typing of Dark and Ghost, which means he has exactly one weakness, and that's to Fairy, and two great abilities in his normal form, as he has access to Prankster, and his Mega has access to Magic Bounce, meaning he can run, for example, Will-O-Wisp to neuter an opponent, and then Mega Evolve and use Magic Bounce, making him a great way to start the game. Given his mixed walling capabilities, making him the best Magic Bounce user ever as well, he had much more success with Gothitelle. However, like I said, he was much better than her, as he was actually a viable Pokemon, so he gets ranked in the S tier. Next is Galarian Slowking. Definitely the best of the slow line, with his best role as a defensive pivot, access to Regenerator and Chilly Reception. He does have an excellent job at supporting his teammates. He has a lot of versatility, being able to run Assault Vest sets, for example, but can run defensive sets with Toxic, Thunder Wave, Slack Off, and Chilly Reception. As mentioned, because this move is unique to him, he is extremely valuable, and with Future Sight, it helps take out Pokemon that are weak to the special attacks, like Dondozo, for example. He was already a great Pokemon last gen, but Chilly Reception really elevated him, making him a reliable A-tier Pokemon. Next is Clefable. She needs no introduction. With stats spread like that, it makes her incredibly versatile and an amazing defensive typing with 2 of the most coveted abilities in competitive Pokemon that assure her longevity. In one of the most versatile move pools as well, I'm talking of all time, rivaling even Mew's. I could literally spend an entire video just talking about all of her different movesets. She can literally sweep teams by using Seismic Toss and has good forms of reliable recovery, as well as offensive moves and utility moves like Thunder Wave, Toxic, Cosmic Power, Knockoff, and Stealth Rock. It is very difficult to predict what she will run, and because of that, she goes into the A tier. This is my tier list for the best stall Pokemon of all time. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong or add another Pokemon. Thanks for watching.